The other day I was browsing Instagram and I came across a picture of a map depicting Germany's embassies throughout the world. So I thought this would be an interesting topic for a video: embassies. First, let's define what an embassy is. An embassy is a diplomatic mission, generally located in the capital city of another country, which offers a full range of services, including consular services. There are also the consulate generals themselves, which are also diplomatic missions located in a major city, but usually not the capital city, providing a full range of consular services as well. So essentially one step down from an embassy, but very similar. We also have consulates on their own, which are exactly the same as a consulate general, but with less services available. And even smaller is a consulate headed by an honorary consul, providing a very limited number of services. But these are the institutions that countries use to represent themselves in another country. If the country wants to represent itself in a major international organization, like the UN or, some other one, they use a permanent mission. For countries belonging to a union or a commonwealth, like for instance the literal Commonwealth, which the UK, Australia, Canada, etc. belong to, the representation is done through a high commission. The same thing happens with the EU, although there the diplomatic missions are known as permanent representations. To make this simpler, we'll merge all the definitions into the concept of diplomatic missions. So now that we know what diplomatic missions or embassies are, let's quickly look at what they do and how they do it. Contrary to popular belief, most diplomatic missions don't have full extraterritorial status. The whole thing that the ground on which the embassy lies is as if it was the other country. In the cases where this isn't true, what happens is that the host state still has jurisdiction, but the embassy does have special privileges like immunity from some local laws. Regardless, the host country cannot enter the premises of the embassy without permission of the represented country, even to do something that helps them, like put out a fire. As for their role, according to the Vienna Convention, the functions of a diplomatic mission consist in representing the sending state in the receiving state, protecting the interests of their own country and of its nationals. Now let's take a look at the countries with the most diplomatic missions, plus a few interesting cases. At number 10, Spain. Now keep in mind this info is from 2017-18 and so might be a little outdated, but never too far from being accurate in general. But one or two close places on the ranking might be switched due to very recent changes. Spain has 212 diplomatic missions. Maybe the kingdom still has the remnants of its empire, and it would make sense that a country that controlled a big part of the world should maintain close relationships with those territories, even though long after they have been granted their due independence. For instance, we can see a pretty much full presence in South America, a region that was for a long time under the control of the Spanish, with a few exceptions like Brazil and other territories. Next is Japan with 214. And it's interesting that Japan is right after Spain because the first Japanese ambassadors to a Western country traveled to Spain in 1613. But Japan's diplomatic efforts go way further back. Japan sent ambassadors to the Tang Chinese court in Xi'an since 607 AD, as well as to the Koryo and Joseon dynasties of early Korea. For centuries, early modern Japan did not actively seek to expand its foreign relations. Only more recently, in the big picture of history, have they done so. For instance, they only opened an embassy in the US in 1860. Now the one that made this video happen, Germany, counting with 218 diplomatic missions. As you can see from these maps, the difference really is very little. The map is almost as equally filled out, it's just slowly filling in the gray areas a little more. Historically, the German state of Prussia and several smaller German states had sent emissaries abroad, prior to the establishment of the North German Confederation. In 1874, Germany itself had only 4 embassies in London, Paris, St. Petersburg, and Vienna. But this was complemented by non-ambassadorial representation in the form of 14 ministerial posts in cities like Lisbon or Copenhagen. A fun fact about Germany is that they also have an extra 354 unpaid honorary consuls to aid their very wide diplomatic network. At number 7, we go to South America, Brazil. With 222 representations abroad, Brazil is a good chance to take a look at the other type of representations besides embassies and consulates, because Brazil is a member of a lot of international organizations. For instance, in Washington, D.C., because it's a member of the Organization of American States, or in Montevideo, due to its belonging to Mercosur. Turkey is next, with 225. In 1793, the first permanent Turkish embassy was established by Ottoman Sultan Selim III in London. In 1924, they had 39 missions abroad, and today that number has gone exponentially up, with 135 embassies, 13 permanent representations, 84 consulates general, and 1 trade office. It is also the only country to have an embassy in the self-proclaimed Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus, because no other country recognizes it as a sovereign state, and it does not have an embassy in one of its neighboring countries. Something odd, if not unique, Armenia, because the two countries have not yet established diplomatic relations. The old leader of the British Empire, the UK, maintains a firm connection with all of the world, having 236 diplomatic missions. The sun now sets on the British Empire. I mean, I guess it doesn't because it's gone, but hey, it still doesn't set on the British embassies because they have one of the largest diplomatic networks in the world. Like I mentioned in the beginning, the diplomatic missions to capitals of other Commonwealth of Nations countries are known as High Commissions, and the UK has a lot of those, like in India, for instance. In 4th place is Russia, with 243. An interesting fact about Russia is that at a certain point, they established several consulates in the US and Canada to help Russian immigrants. But in 1917, the Tsarist government was overthrown. However, consuls in 7 US cities and 3 Canadian cities maintained Tsarist loyalties and received support from the US for a while before being seized. But I imagine during that time they were no longer representing the new Soviet government. Nowadays, the Russian Federation has no diplomatic relations with Bhutan and Solomon Islands, although I couldn't find out why. And also, since Georgia and Russia severed diplomatic relations in 2008, the Swiss embassy in Tbilisi, Georgia, hosts a Russians' interest section. Typical Switzerland, always neutral ground. Cracking open the top 3 is China with 258. For over 50 years, the People's Republic of China has been competing with the Republic of China for diplomatic recognition in the international community. The Republic of China is what we know as Taiwan. Until the 1970s, most countries in the world recognized Taiwan as being China instead of the People's Republic. But these days, the situation has been reversed. Ever since the end of the Chinese internal war, Taiwan and mainland China both exist. However, due to the mainland's astounding economic power, they tend to enforce the rule that they are the only China. And so, a lot of countries can't, for that reason, have an embassy in Taiwan. A big number of the world's countries have no representation at all. A lot, however, have established a representative plus a trade association of some sort. And only very, very few, like Panama or Haiti, have actual embassies. France gets the silver medal with 267 embassies. France's permanent representation abroad began in the reign of Francis I, when, in 1522, he sent a delegation to the Swiss. And their situation as one of the world's top diplomatic network owners also comes, I think like the Spanish, from its former colonial empire. France still has substantial influence throughout the world, and is, for instance, a member of more multilateral organizations than any other country in the world. And in first place are the United States of America, the country in the world that has the most embassies/diplomatic missions, a total of 271. Benjamin Franklin established the first overseas mission of the US in Paris in 1779, but it is said that Morocco in 1777 became the first nation to seek diplomatic relations with the United States, and together they maintain the United States' longest unbroken treaty. However, the claim also goes to the Netherlands, as they were the first to recognize the US as an independent government. In fact, the early stages of US diplomacy essentially consisted of sending envoys to European courts in order to achieve a recognition of American independence. A fun fact is that some countries have different namings for their missions and staff. For instance, a Vatican City mission is headed by a nuncio, which is Latin for envoy, and so they are known as an apostolic nunciator, which I'm probably mispronouncing. So that was an overview of what an embassy is, the countries with the most embassies, and some interesting cases where embassies are not present. Maybe this is just me, but I've always loved embassies and what they represent. A desire for countries to connect with each other, establish friendly relations, and work together for the benefit of both their peoples. Thanks so much for watching this video. Remember to subscribe if you want to catch future ones. Leave a comment below with any suggestions, corrections, or just your opinions about the video. If you want, join our Discord server in the description to talk with me and all your fellow subscribers. I will see you next time for more general knowledge.